Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that.
Bill Maher recently criticized the far left and AOC, saying they're drifting too far into socialism, and the backlash hit fast and hard. Ever since Zoran Mandy announced he was running for New York mayor, Maher has been voicing his concerns, and now that Momini has actually won, he's even more upset to see AOC embracing what he sees as a rising socialist wave. Buckle up, because according to Maher's take, this political showdown is about to get a lot louder and a lot more intense.
If anybody is skeptical, I would say get to know him. And once you get into a room with him, kick the tires yourself and make your own assessment instead of just kind of making assessments from what you may see on television. Something that I share, that I feel like I share with Zoran, is that the way sometimes people are painted in media doesn't always align with who we really are as individuals. And so I think that when people get to know him as a person, when people get to know us as real people.
AOC is now pushing back against critics like Maher, who warned that supporting Momini and what he views as a far-left agenda could not only hurt New York, but also weaken the DNC's chances in 2028. Maher and others describe promoting a strongly socialist figure as a risky political gamble that could push moderates away and hand opponents an easy talking point. AOC, on the other hand, insists that people should actually learn about Mamdani before judging him, which some find amusing since she never offered the same benefit of the doubt to Donald Trump or other conservative candidates. Her sudden call for open-mindedness strikes many as selective rather than sincere, causing both supporters and critics to question her defense. Maher, unsurprisingly, fired back with even more commentary of his own.
I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, home.
Maher is now speaking out even louder, warning that the left is setting itself up for failure by tying its goals to Mamdani and his strongly socialist views. In his eyes, this isn't bold leadership, it's political self-harm. He argues that by promoting figures who push intense ideological ideas, Democrats are risking their credibility and weakening their connection with everyday voters. Instead of welcoming more people into the party, Maher believes they're shrinking their reach and losing independents and moderates who prefer practical solutions over big ideological battles. He insists the left is steering straight toward trouble of its own making and urges them to rethink their direction before the damage becomes permanent.
Selection is taking place when we have a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires in both political parties to select the candidates they want and to buy elections.
The irony, critics argue, is that figures like Bernie Sanders, who have gained enormous success within a capitalist system, still insist that socialist ideas would lead the country to greater prosperity. Their public influence, book deals, speaking events, and long careers were all shaped by the very system they now say is beyond repair. Many observers believe that even these leaders know that the level of socialism they promote wouldn't realistically support their own platforms or lifestyles, yet they continue sharing the message as if it wouldn't affect them personally. The most frustrating part, critics say, is calling for major wealth redistribution while benefiting from opportunities, comfort, and freedom that only a market-based economy could have provided. From a fairly secure position, their arguments can come across as idealistic rather than practical.
Turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Maher wastes no time telling AOC and New Yorkers that socialism can't simply be refreshed like a brand new product, reminding them that many places throughout history have tried similar ideas only to run into hard economic limits. He argues that no matter how much supporters attempt to update or rename the concept, New York is unlikely to break a long pattern of disappointing results. But here's the surprising part. AOC recently claimed that New York isn't an exception at all. It represents the future she believes the country should embrace. If that's true, Maher warns, people should prepare for outcomes that, in his view, won't lead to growth or stability. Instead, he believes the consequences would be both foreseeable and entirely avoidable.
Iran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar. Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor.
Maher then shifts his focus to Bernie Sanders, pointing to a socialist program the senator once promoted in Vermont, an effort that, in Maher's view, stumbled almost immediately after being put into action. He often highlights this pattern. On paper, the goals behind these ideas sound inspiring, full of hopeful promises and moral appeal, but real-world conditions quickly expose their weaknesses. As he sees it, expenses climb, disagreements widen, and idealistic plans crash into the practical demands of running a community. Maher argues that Sanders' attempt in Vermont wasn't just a misstep. It showed that good intentions can't replace solid, workable governance when everything starts falling apart like a fragile structure under a small push. He maintains that while socialist concepts aim for fairness, they often lead to shortages, inefficiencies, and financial instability when used on a larger scale. And he adds, Vermont wasn't even an unfriendly place to test such ideas.
Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Maher doesn't hold back in his critique, drawing a sharp distinction between AOC, Bernie, and other Democrats who embrace socialism and the more moderate, inclusive wing of the party. He emphasizes that their socialist beliefs form the foundation of their politics, which often clashes with the preferences of mainstream voters. Yet the irony, he insists, is unmistakable. Both AOC and Bernie have achieved their success through the very capitalist system they frequently criticize. That same system created the platforms, book deals, careers, and influence they now enjoy. While Maher admits capitalism has its flaws, it can be messy, unfair, and frustrating, he argues it still outperforms socialism, which historically has led to political stagnation, shortages, and institutional decline. Despite its imperfections, capitalism fosters opportunity, innovation, and upward mobility, advantages that socialist systems rarely sustain, making his point strikingly clear.
Dami seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies?
Because Abigail Spanberger's warnings were largely ignored, the DNC now appears to be moving rapidly toward more openly socialist policies, which some critics find alarming. This shift resembles the rise of a vocal, uncompromising movement, driven more by the party's fringe than its mainstream members. It is not being championed by moderates, independents, or everyday Democrats, but by a small, outspoken group that prioritizes major ideological change over winning elections or appealing to voters. Many mainstream Democrats remain largely silent, and that silence is interpreted by some as tacit approval rather than neutrality. By ignoring these radical voices, the party risks letting its future and identity be shaped by a minority rather than the majority. Spanberger had tried to guide the party toward a practical, voter-focused approach, but her advice was overlooked as leadership hesitated to rein in its own ideological extremes.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won in districts Trump also won, all moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times.
To restate the point, critics argue that the DNC needs to move away from woke rhetoric that risks pushing the party into political irrelevance and return to its core principle. These missteps were more than minor mistakes. They played a key role in the Democrats' losses in the previous election, leaving voters frustrated, disillusioned, and convinced that the party prioritized symbolic gestures over practical solutions. Instead of learning from that outcome, the party has doubled down on socialist-leaning policies rather than embracing a more moderate, pragmatic approach. By shifting further left, they risk alienating independents and moderate voters, the very groups that often decide elections. Observers suggest this strategic choice prioritizes activist enthusiasm over broader public support, and they warn that Democrats must recognize the electorate's preference for practical solutions over fringe ideology if they hope to rebuild trust and regain momentum.
So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to. Thing is, socialism will you. Because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked, like Kevin Federline.
The message is clear. The DNC is at a pivotal moment, and the choices it makes now could define its future. Critics like Maher have repeatedly warned that embracing socialism and other extreme positions is not bold leadership. It is politically risky. Figures such as AOC and Bernie Sanders may feel they are leading the charge, but their success has been built on the capitalist system they often critique, exposing a gap between ideals and reality. Meanwhile, many mainstream Democrats remain silent, risking alienation of independents and moderates while allowing more radical voices to shape the party's identity. History and practical experience suggest that policies rooted in socialist experiments often fail under real-world conditions. Maher's warnings serve as a sobering reminder of the danger of repeating past mistakes. To thrive in future elections, the DNC must return to the center, embrace pragmatism, and focus on ideas that resonate with everyday Americans rather than chasing ideological purity. This concludes today's discussion. If you enjoyed this post, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.